The FBI's Extra T's by Janson Davies. Chapter 1. The Bare Facts. The convoy of matte black SUVs tore through the perimeter roads of Los Angeles International Airport, sirens off, lights low, engines growling like predators in pursuit. Inside the lead vehicle, FBI Special Agent Glenda Forrester reviewed the tactical briefing one last time, her eyes scanning the digital dossier with surgical precision. 5 cartel members, South American origin, armed with automatic weapons and suicide vests, hostages, 24 of America's most powerful figures, CEOs, senators, media moguls. The jet was parked on an isolated tarmac rigged with explosives. The demands were impossible: cease all U.S. military operations against the cartel and release their imprisoned leaders. Agent Richards, her second-in-command, leaned forward from the back seat. "What are we going to do, boss?" "This feels like a no-win scenario." Glenda didn't look up. "First, we make sure there are no witnesses." Richards blinked. "Excuse me." She tapped her earpiece. "Local law enforcement, pull back. Secure the perimeter. No drones, no eyes. I want a no-fly zone and communications blackout radius around that jet." As the SUVs screeched to a halt, Glenda stepped out, her HRT team fanning around her in full assault gear. She walked to the rear of her vehicle and popped the trunk. Inside, an aluminum case, unmarked, humming faintly. She opened it and pulled out a device that looked like a relic from the 1950s. A chrome canister with a hose and nozzle, like a vacuum cleaner designed by a mad physicist. Richards stared. "Is that what I think it is?" Glenda didn't answer. She walked toward the jet, aimed the device, and pressed a button. A beam of blue light shot forward, enveloping the aircraft in a shimmering cocoon. The air vibrated. The sound was like a choir of tuning forks. Then, silence. One by one, the jet's passengers, crew, and hostage-takers materialized on the runway beneath the plane. Naked, disoriented, alive. The HRT team surged forward, tackling the cartel members, wrapping blankets around the stunned hostages. Glenda packed away the device and turned to Richards. "You took that out of evidence without authorization, didn't you?" he asked. "I took what I needed," she replied. "You knew you'd need alien tech." "I knew it wouldn't hurt," Richards gestured to the runway. "And what are you going to tell the deputy director?" Glenda smirked. "Just the facts. The bare facts." Chapter 2. Out of Sight. The press conference was brief, chaotic, and carefully misleading. Deputy Director Harold Rosen stood behind the podium, flanked by grim-faced officials. He offered no explanation for why 24 of America's most powerful figures had been found naked on a runway. No mention of alien tech, no mention of Glenda Forrester. "Thanks to the swift actions of our hostage recovery team," Rosen said, "the situation was resolved without loss of life. That's all I can say at this time." Behind closed doors, however, the mood was less congratulatory. Glenda sat across from Rosen in a soundproof briefing room at Quantico, her tactical gear replaced by a charcoal suit and a 1,000-yard stare. Rosen rubbed his temples and gestured to the classified footage looping on the monitor, the blue beam, the sudden teleportation, the naked chaos. "You used a device from the vault," he said, "without clearance, without protocol." "I used what worked," Glenda replied. "You exposed alien tech to 12 billionaires and half of Congress." "I exposed it to cartel members with explosives strapped to a jet full of hostages. I'd do it again." "Okay," Rosen sighed. "You're not being punished. You're being reassigned." Glenda leaned forward. "To where?" "New Mexico. You'll be heading up the FBI's Extraterrestrial Investigation Unit. Unofficially, they call it the Extra T's. Take Richards with you." Glenda blinked. You're sending me to Area 51. Close. You'll be working under Rear Admiral Abel Borden, Office of Naval Intelligence. He's not thrilled about having an FBI agent in his sandbox. Let me guess, he hates civilians. Close. He hates everyone who isn't Navy. Rosen slid a folder across the table. Inside, satellite images of a spacecraft hovering 6 feet above the desert floor. Not crashed, not landed, floating. There's a situation near White Sands, Rosen said. A craft, a suspect, and something we can't explain. Glenda stood, pocketed the folder, and turned to leave. Agent Forrester, Rosen called after her. You're not HRT anymore. You're not a hammer. You're a scalpel now. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Outside, the sun was setting over Quantico, casting long shadows across the Potomac River. Glenda walked toward her SUV, her mind already shifting gears. She wasn't being buried. She was being repurposed. And if the extra T's had found something, she was going to find out what the hell it was. Chapter 3. Desert Morning. The desert was quiet in the way only ancient places could be, wide, windy, and waiting. Glenda Forrester and Special Agent Richards stepped out of the chopper and onto the cracked earth of White Sands, their boots sinking slightly into the powdery terrain. The sun was brutal overhead, but the air felt charged, like the atmosphere before a lightning strike. Her team had arrived hours earlier, but no one had dared approach the craft. It hovered 6 feet above the ground, motionless, silver and black, and shaped like a saucer. Blue lights blinked in slow, deliberate patterns along its hull, like a heartbeat trying to remember its rhythm. A perimeter had been established, but it felt more ceremonial than tactical. No one wanted to touch it. Not yet. Agent Forrester, said Miko Tran, her tech specialist, jogging up with a tablet. Craft's been stable for 6 hours. No emissions, no movement. But it's broadcasting something, not in any known language. Glenda nodded, eyes fixed on the figure sitting cross-legged in the sand beneath the ship. Dressed entirely in black, the being looked humanoid. Tall, slender, with elongated limbs and a face obscured by a veil of shimmering black fabric. In its lap lay the body of a small alien child, pale and still, wrapped in a black cloth that pulsed faintly with light. The adult figure rocked gently, keening in a low, melodic hum that made the hairs on Glenda's arms stand up. "Is that our suspect?" she asked. "Technically," Miko said, "but it hasn't moved. Hasn't spoken, just mourned." Glenda approached slowly, her team hanging back. The sand around the craft was littered with footprints, some human, some not, some impossibly large. Others looked like they'd been burned into the earth rather than pressed into it. She knelt beside the figure, careful not to touch it. "I'm Agent Glenda Forrester, FBI," she said softly. "I'm here to understand what happened." The figure didn't respond, but the hum shifted, lower, sadder, like a song remembering its final verse. Glenda studied the child. Its features were delicate, almost translucent. Not a casualty of violence, she thought. Not a victim of natural causes either. She turned to Miko. "Get me a scan of those footprints, and start mapping the energy field around the craft. I want to know what it's protecting, and what it's hiding." As her team moved into action, Glenda remained kneeling, watching the figure grieve. This wasn't a crime scene. It seemed more like a memorial. And somewhere in the desert, something had walked away from it. Chapter 4. The Footprint Protocol. The desert didn't just hold secrets, it preserved them. Glenda crouched beside the strange footprints, her gloved hand hovering just above the sand. They weren't just impressions. Some were scorched into the earth, others shimmered faintly, as if resisting gravity. A few looked like they'd been made by creatures with no feet at all, just pressure signatures like something had hovered low and left a psychic bruise. Miko Tran scanned the area with a handheld LiDAR unit, the screen flickering with anomalies. "These aren't just prints," he said. "They're encoded. Some of them are emitting low-frequency pulses, like breadcrumbs." Glenda followed the trail, her team fanning out behind her. The footprints led away from the hovering craft and toward a jagged outcrop of rock half a mile east. As they approached, the air grew colder, unnaturally so. The sun still blazed overhead, but the temperature dropped like they'd stepped into an icebox. The cave mouth was narrow, almost hidden. Inside, the walls were etched with glyphs, spirals, stars, and humanoid figures with elongated skulls and radiant eyes. Glenda ran her fingers across one symbol, a child cradled in a beam of light, surrounded by what looked like grieving figures. "This isn't graffiti," she said. "It's a story." Richards stepped beside her, his voice low. "You think the child was sacrificed?" Glenda nodded. "Not to kill, maybe to signal." They moved deeper into the cave where the air pulsed with energy. At the center, buried beneath a thin layer of sand, they found a beacon, metallic, ancient, and humming with dormant power. Miko activated a containment field around it. "It's still broadcasting," he said, "but not to us. It's reaching out, outer space." Glenda stared at the beacon, her mind racing. The morning figure, the floating craft, the encoded footprints. It wasn't a crime scene. It was a ritual site, a message, looked like a warning. She turned to her team. "We're not just investigating aliens. We're walking through their mythology." Outside, the desert wind picked up, scattering sand across the footprints, erasing the trail. But Glenda had seen enough. The child's death wasn't the beginning of the case. It was the beginning of everything. Chapter 5. Borden's Ultimatum. The Office of Naval Intelligence compound in New Mexico looked more like a weapons testing site than a research facility. Concrete bunkers, chain-link fences, and a perimeter patrolled by silent drones. Glenda Forrester arrived in a government-issued SUV, her credentials scanned 3 times before she was allowed through the final gate. Inside, Rear Admiral Abel Borden waited in a windowless conference room, arms folded, uniform crisp, expression carved from granite. He didn't stand when she entered. "You're late," he said. "I wasn't aware I was on your time clock," Glenda replied. "You are now." Borden gestured to a monitor displaying the floating craft, the morning figure, and the beacon recovered from the cave. "Your team's actions have triggered a Level 4 containment protocol. That means I'm in charge." Glenda sat across from him, unflinching. "Containment of what, exactly?" "Unknown tech. Unknown motives. Unknown consequences. That's 3 unknowns too many." Glenda leaned forward. "The figure isn't hostile. The child wasn't a casualty, it was a signal. We're not dealing with a threat. We're dealing with a warning." Borden tapped the screen. "You're dealing with a suspect. And you're going to interrogate it. Today." Glenda stood. "I don't take orders from the Navy." "You do now. Welcome to the chain of command." She left the room without another word, her mind already racing. Borden wasn't just territorial, he was afraid. Not because of the alien tech, but of losing control. The Extra T's weren't just a fringe unit anymore. They were sitting on something beyond human understanding. Back at the desert site, the craft remained suspended, its lights pulsing in a new rhythm. Faster, sharper, like a countdown. The morning figure hadn't moved, but the air around it had changed. Denser, charged. Glenda approached with caution. "I need to understand," she said. "Why the child? Why here?" The figure raised its head. Its veil shimmered, revealing eyes that were not eyes, just swirling galaxies behind translucent skin. "The child was our last hope," it said, And your first warning. Glenda felt the words in her bones, not spoken, imprinted. She turned to Miko. Get me a secure channel. I want to transmit everything we've found to the vault. Richards frowned. You think they'll listen? No, Glenda said, but they'll know I did. Behind her, the craft began to rotate, slowly, deliberately, and somewhere inside the ONI compound, Borden was already preparing to shut her down. Chapter 6. The Blue Pulse. It started with the birds. A flock of desert vultures flew overhead, then froze mid-flight. Wings outstretched, suspended like marionettes with invisible strings. Glenda blinked. The air shimmered. Then the birds resumed motion, as if nothing had happened. Did you see that? She asked. Miko nodded, pale. Time distortion. Localized. The pulses are increasing. The alien craft hovered silently, but its blue lights now pulsed in a rhythmic sequence. 3 short, 1 long, then a pause. The pattern repeated every 30 seconds, and with each cycle, the desert seemed to warp. Shadows stretched unnaturally. The sand beneath their feet vibrated with a low hum, like a tuning fork buried in the earth. Glenda approached the craft again, her body tense, her mind alert. The mourning figure remained seated, unmoving, but the child's body now glowed faintly, as if reacting to the pulses. Is it alive? Richards asked. No, Glenda said, but it's not done. She reached out, not to touch, but to listen. The pulses weren't just electromagnetic, they were cognitive. She felt them in her skull, behind her eyes. Images flickered, cities burning, skies filled with ships, a voice whispering through static. You are not ready. Glenda staggered back, breath shallow. The vision had felt real, not imagined, imprinted. Miko scanned her vitals. Your heart rate spiked, brain activity off the charts. Whatever that thing is broadcasting, it's not just data, it's memory. Richards looked around. Then whose memory is it? Glenda steadied herself. Ours, theirs, maybe both. She turned to the figure. Why show me this? The figure finally moved, lifting its veil. Its face was not alien, not exactly. It was a composite. Human features overlaid with shifting patterns, like a mask made of starlight. The child was our last hope, it said again. To warn you. Glenda felt the words ripple through her, not spoken, transferred. She turned to her team. We need to isolate the pulses, build a containment field, and I want a full neural scan of everyone on site. If this thing is rewriting perception, we need to know how deep it goes. As her team scrambled into action, Glenda stared at the craft. It wasn't a vehicle, it was a transmitter, and the message wasn't just a warning. It was a test. Chapter 7. The Vault. The pulses stopped at 3:17 a.m., not faded, not slowed, just stopped, as if the craft had exhaled its final breath and gone silent. Glenda Forrester stood beneath the hovering vessel, the desert wind brushing sand across her boots. The silence was unnerving, not peaceful, expectant. Miko Tran crouched beside a portable receiver, his fingers flying across the interface. I think we cracked it, he said. The signal wasn't a broadcast. It was a handshake. Glenda stepped closer. With what? Miko turned the screen toward her. A vault, buried beneath the craft. It's been dormant for decades, maybe longer. Richards joined them, scanning the horizon. You're saying the ship was unlocking something underground? No, Miko said. It was waking it up. They followed the coordinates to a rocky ridge half a mile east. Beneath layers of sediment and quartz, they uncovered a metallic hatch, circular, etched with the same glyphs found in the cave. The symbols shimmered faintly, reacting to Glenda's presence. She placed her hand on the hatch. It opened. Inside, a chamber lined with crystalline panels, each flickering with holographic data. The walls pulsed with images, wars, revolutions, natural disasters, but not just Earth's, other worlds, other timelines. "This is surveillance," Glenda whispered. "They've been watching us." Miko activated a central console. A projection filled the vault. Earth, surrounded by concentric rings of alien script. Each ring represented a phase: observation, intervention, containment. "We're in phase 3, Miko said. Containment." Glenda studied the data. The vault held records of every major human conflict, every technological leap, every moment of mass psychological shift. But it also held something else: coordinates, dozens of them, scattered across the globe. "What are these?" Richards asked. "Extra-T's investigation sites," Glenda said. "Places where alien tech was buried, hidden, or weaponized." She turned to the final panel. It showed the child. Not dead, not alive, suspended. A temporal anchor. "The child wasn't just a warning," she said. "It was a key." The vault began to hum, its lights intensifying. A final message appeared, written in both alien glyphs and English. "You are being watched. You are being tested. You are not alone." Glenda stepped back, her mind racing. The craft hadn't come to threaten. It had come to deliver. And now the message was sent. Chapter 8. The Tucson Reversal. The Tucson site wasn't on any map. Officially, it was a decommissioned radar station. Unofficially, it was a burial ground, for tech too dangerous to study, too alien to destroy. Glenda's convoy arrived at dawn, the desert sky bruised with violet and gold. The vault's coordinates had led her here, and the signal was growing stronger. The entrance was sealed behind a rusted hangar door. Miko hacked the keypad, bypassing a Cold War-era encryption system that had no business still functioning. Inside, dust, silence, and a single object resting on a pedestal. It looked like a mirror. Not reflective, refractive. The surface shimmered with shifting images, like a pool of mercury remembering dreams. Around it, the floor was scorched in a perfect circle. Glenda stepped closer. "This isn't a transporter," Miko said. "It's a splicer." Richards frowned. "What's the difference?" Miko hesitated. "Transporters move people. Splicers. Trade them." Glenda stared into the device. Her own reflection fractured, showing versions of herself. Some older, some younger, some wearing uniforms she'd never earned. One version had a scar across her cheek. Another wore a Navy insignia. "Parallel selves," she whispered. "Timelines." The vault's data had hinted at this. Temporal anchors, mythic reversals, the idea that Earth was being tested across multiple realities. This device was the mechanism, a way to swap one version of reality for another. Richard stepped forward. "We should destroy it." But Glenda was already reaching out. The moment her fingers touched the surface, the room went silent. Then, a flash. Richards staggered back. "Glenda?" She turned slowly. Her eyes were different, calmer, sharper. "I'm still me," she said, "but I've seen things. Versions of us that lost, versions that surrendered." Miko scanned her vitals. "You're stable, but your neural patterns are layered." Glenda looked at the splicer. "This isn't just tech. It's a test. The aliens aren't invading. They're selecting." Richards stepped beside her. "And what happens if they choose wrong?" Glenda didn't answer. She was staring at the mirror again. One version of herself was smiling. Another was burning. Chapter 9. Doppelganger. The Tucson facility was quiet again, but not still. Glenda Forrester sat across from Agent Richards in the debriefing room, a single lamp casting long shadows across the concrete walls. He looked like Richards. He sounded like Richards, but something was off. He was too calm, too precise. "You're not him," she said. Richards smiled. "I am, just not the version you remember." Glenda leaned forward. "Then where's my Richards?" "Alive, in a parallel thread. One where the vault was never opened, one where you never touched the splicer." Glenda's pulse quickened. "Why are you here?" "To help," he said. "To warn." He reached into his jacket and placed a small device on the table. It looked like a compass, but the needles spun erratically, pointing in directions that didn't exist. "This tracks temporal drift," he said. "Your timeline is unstable. The vault opened too early. The child was sacrificed too late. You're bleeding into other versions." Glenda stared at the device. "How do I stop it?" "You don't," he said. "You choose which version to preserve." She stood, pacing. "You expect me to trust you? I expect you to listen." He tapped the compass. A hologram flickered to life, an image of Earth surrounded by concentric rings. The outermost ring was red, pulsing. "That's your current thread," he said. "It's nearing collapse." Glenda turned to Miko, who had been silently watching from the corner. "Run a scan. I want to know if this version of Richards is emitting any anomalous energy." Miko hesitated. "Already did. He's clean, but his neural patterns are layered, like yours were." "Like mine?" Glenda said. Richards nodded. "We're both spliced, but I've been through this before. In my thread, the vault opened in 1997. We failed. The child was taken. The craft detonated. Earth was quarantined." Glenda sat down again, her voice low. "Why send you here?" "Because your thread is different. You hesitated. You mourned. You listened." He leaned in. "That's why they're watching you." Glenda felt the weight of it, the vault, the child, the craft, the splicer. It wasn't just a case anymore. It was a crucible. She turned to Miko. "Lock down the splicer. No one touches it, not even me." Richards smiled again. "Good choice." But Glenda wasn't sure, because somewhere her real Richards was still out there, and he might be the only one who knew how this story ends. Chapter 10. The Naked War. The call came at midnight. Glenda Forrester was in her temporary quarters at the O&I compound, reviewing the vault's coordinates, when her secure line lit up. Deputy Director Harold Rosen's voice was clipped, urgent. "We've got a situation. I'm reactivating your clearance." "I didn't know my clearance was deactivated," she said. "Borden did it, behind your back." Glenda sat up. "What kind of situation?" "Pentagon Black Site, Nevada. They've gone rogue, using alien tech to interrogate civilians. We need you to shut it down." Glenda's blood ran cold. "What kind of tech?" "Transporter adjacent. Hybridized. They're calling it a perception scrubber. It erases memory, identity, entire towns." She paused. "You want me to use the transporter again?" "I want you to stop them before they use it on DC." Glenda arrived at the Nevada site by dawn. The town was gone, not destroyed, erased, buildings intact, streets clean. But no people, no records, no history, just silence. Miko scanned the area. "It's like someone hit delete on reality." Richards, still the mirror version, examined the perimeter. "This isn't just memory loss. It's narrative collapse. They're rewriting history." At the center of town stood a bunker, surrounded by military vehicles and a perimeter of armed guards. Glenda flashed her credentials. They hesitated, then let her through. Inside, she found the device. It looked like a satellite dish fused with a brain scanner. Wires snaked into the walls. A single chair sat beneath it, surrounded by monitors displaying flickering images, faces, names, timelines. A colonel greeted her. "We're stabilizing national memory," he said, "removing threats before they manifest." Glenda stared at the screens. One showed her, another showed the child, a third showed the vault. "You're erasing people's futures," she said. "We're protecting them." She turned to leave. "Not like this." Outside, she activated her own transporter, modified, encrypted, and still technically illegal. She aimed it at the bunker and fired. The blue beam enveloped the structure. When it faded, the bunker was empty. The device gone. The monitors dark. Richards approached. "You just wiped a military installation." Glenda nodded. "I wiped a lie." Back in Washington, Rosen was furious. "You used alien tech on U.S. soil. Again." Glenda didn't flinch. "I used it to stop a war. It was our only hope." He leaned in. "You're out of control." "No," she said. "I'm out of patience." She turned and walked out, her clearance still active, her team still loyal. The war wasn't between nations anymore. It was between narratives, and Glenda was choosing hers. Chapter 11. The Bear Reckoning. Rear Admiral Abel Borden stood in the command center of the ONI compound, arms folded, eyes locked on the vault's data stream. The alien archive pulsed across the monitors, coordinates, timelines, warnings. But Borden wasn't interested in understanding it. He wanted control. Glenda Forrester entered without knocking. Her team flanked her, Miko, Richards, the mirror version, and two agents from the Extra T's who had seen too much to stay silent. "You're off this case," Borden said. "Effective immediately." Glenda didn't blink. "You don't have the authority." "I have the clearance." She stepped forward. "You're a little man full of fear." "That's not the same thing." Borden gestured to the monitors. "This tech is destabilizing reality. You've already triggered a containment breach in Nevada. You've spliced timelines. You've weaponized alien devices. I've protected this planet," she said, "from people like you." He reached for the override panel. "I'm shutting down the vault." Glenda raised her hand. "You touch that panel and I release the archive." Borden froze. "You wouldn't dare." She nodded to Miko, who tapped his tablet. The vault's interface lit up, projecting a hologram of Earth surrounded by red-threaded timelines, each one marked with a name, a date, a consequence. One thread showed Borden. In it, he had succeeded. Earth was quarantined, the vault sealed, the child erased. Another thread showed Glenda. In it, the Extra T's had become guardians. The vault remained open, the child reborn. "You're not just wrong," Glenda said. "You're obsolete." Borden lunged for the panel. Glenda activated the transporter. A beam of blue light enveloped him. When it faded, Borden was gone. In his place stood a version of him, younger, quieter, wearing civilian clothes. He looked around, confused. "Where am I?" he asked. Glenda stepped forward. "Somewhere better." She turned to her team. "Lock down the vault. Archive everything. We're not just investigating anymore. We're curating." Richard smiled. "You just rewrote your chain of command." "No," Glenda said. "I restored balance." Outside, the desert wind picked up. The craft hovered silently, its pulses now slow and steady. The morning figure had vanished. The child's body was gone, but the message remained. "You are being watched. You are being tested. You are not alone." Glenda walked into the light of the rising sun, her team behind her, the vault humming beneath their feet. The war wasn't over, but the story was hers now. Epilogue. The Watchers. The desert was quiet again. The vault had gone dormant, its pulses reduced to a slow, steady hum, like a heartbeat in deep sleep. The craft still hovered, but its lights had dimmed, no longer broadcasting, no longer testing. It had done what it came to do. Glenda Forrester stood at the edge of the ridge, watching the horizon bleed into twilight. Her team had dispersed for the night, but she remained. Not out of duty, out of reverence. The child's burial site had become a shrine, not official, not marked, just a circle of stones and a single glyph etched into the sand, a spiral within a spiral, a symbol of recursion, of return. She knelt beside it, placing a hand on the earth. "We listened," she whispered. "We changed." Behind her, the wind shifted. A figure approached. Richards, the real one. He looked older, worn, but unmistakably him. "You found your way back," she said. "Not back," he replied. "Sideways." "You ever figure out who the child was?" he asked. "It was us. Mankind. It represented us at our earliest stage of understanding," she said. They stood in silence, watching the stars emerge. One blinked brighter than the rest, then another, then a dozen. "They're watching," Richards said. Glenda nodded. "Let them." He turned to her. "What now?" She smiled. "We build. We teach. We prepare." The extra T's had become more than a unit. They were a philosophy, a promise, that truth would not be buried, that stories, real, mythic, alien, would be honored, not erased. As the stars multiplied, Glenda felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not power, alignment. She turned to Richards. "You ever wonder what the T really stands for?" He raised an eyebrow. "Terrestrials." She shook her head. "Truth." And beneath the desert sky, surrounded by silence, memory, and stars that weren't just stars, Glenda Forrester walked back toward the vault. Not to close it, to keep it open. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.